Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm your host, Christine Devlin Eck. Here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies, we explore and expand on conscious postpartum care. We navigate the overlap of caring for others and caring for ourselves. We honor the transitions, not only in giving birth, but in being alive. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Okay, welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm Christine. I'm so happy to be here with another incredible person who is sharing her time with us. Today I have Emily Seeboo here. I came across Emily from Instagram, and her page, her profile is just so beautifully done, and her stories are just really engaging. And I've invited Emily here today to really talk about her experience going through the childbearing year and creating that super personal decision making that goes along with it. Like, you really, I mean, all of us who go through it have to create our own personal journey. But there's that fine line of creating a journey that's right for us that may not always align with the family that we come from or the communities that we're in, and kind of the complexities that weave through that process during pregnancy, decisions during pregnancy, during birth, plans that we create for birth, and then of course the postpartum window, which is what we really see is like the foundation for the rest of it. It's the beginning. So welcome, Emily. And Emily is from North Hollywood, but now she is in Salmon, Idaho. And thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to pick up my baby really quick. I'm over here. Let's see. Hey, all right. We'll just have Bjorn fascinated by looking at Christine. All right.
Mm-hmm. Hi, baby's always welcome. This is what we do here. We really create the stories and the realities of all of it. And this is it. Listeners may not be able to see, but this is it right here. So Emily, I would love for you to just share a little bit about you to really introduce yourself to some of the listeners here today.
Yeah, so I am a mobility and strength coach. And before getting pregnant, I never thought I would want to get into or be intrigued by getting into birth work and helping serve and support women through conception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. But after going through the journey myself of being pregnant and not having the support I really needed and longed for from family and close friends, I realized like there's a gap. And I think, yeah, I was searching for it, and I'm thankful that I did find a community, but I still think a lot of women are lost in getting support and having support from family with the choices that how they want to have birth.
It's really one of those moments where the passion behind birth and postpartum and all of it kind of sneaks up on us when all of a sudden we're in it. And I feel like my worldview just kind of burst open in a way that I had no idea was coming. But I think, to start out with, when you found out you were pregnant, what did you envision for yourself once you realized, oh my gosh, this is happening for me? What did you start to envision for yourself?
I immediately knew I wanted to have the most optimal and peaceful birth, because I know that it can affect, have long-term effects on the mother-baby relationship. So I knew I wanted to have a home birth. I didn't know what that looked like at first. And I also knew I wanted to just go a very natural route, including, my environment, the products I put on my face, the foods I was eating. So I really wanted to be conscious of that, because I wanted my baby to be not just healthy, right? I feel like that's such a broad term, but really thriving and developing the best way possible physically. And yeah.
And so did you feel like you had all of the resources to make that happen? Were they accessible to you? Did you feel like you had the availability of the caregivers that you wanted, of the types of support that you needed?
Well, I bought a lot of books and listened to a lot of podcasts on ultrasounds and women having unassisted home births and women having home births with medical midwives. And when I learned that who was in my birth space could affect the hormonal blueprint, I immediately knew I didn't want a midwife. I just wanted my husband and I and our 2 dogs.
Hmm. So tell me about, how that, when you began communicating with your family and friends, and what came up for you and what came up for them, and how did you navigate it?
Well, I was so excited to share that thought and idea that I wanted to have a free birth, a family birth, with just my husband and I. I was so excited to share it with my friends and family, and I didn't expect the the reaction that I received, which was like, whoa, like that is so radical, that is so unsafe, you could die, like what are you thinking? And it was just like they were raining on my parade. And at that moment, I knew that they didn't understand what birth really was, what physiological birth looked like, because they've heard their horror stories. They went through perhaps a traumatic birth or an emergency C-section. Even for my mom, she had all 3 of her kids, including me, at a hospital and had an epidural. And yeah, so her immediate response was like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so hard because, you know, the concern, I think, it comes from a place of caring, a place of fear, a place of love, However, that can be really difficult for us to navigate when we know in our hearts, like, what is right for us. And the fact of it is that we're all sort of living in this world where there is so much fear-based information and there is so little support for alternatives that go out of that main story of how birth happens. And I think, now we have so many more stories and so many more resources and so much more in terms of evidence about different ways that birth is safe and different ways that birth can happen. But it falls to us sort of to play this role of like, now I have to educate you. Now I have to be the one to like share the information with you and try to, not only broaden your understanding, but also it kind of feels like you're defending yourself, which is not a great feeling.
Yeah, it definitely is not a great feeling to feel like I have to be the one to educate my family and friends, be the one to persuade and convince and defend myself. It was not a great headspace for me or my husband, because every time we'd get on the phone, hoping that they wouldn't bring up my decisions to have a home birth, it would come up. And then after the phone call, I would feel so like, oh, I should have said this to debunk their assumption. And it would just go on and on our walks at night and even in bed. And it was not the greatest headspace to be in during pregnancy.
Did you find there was like a solution or a resolution or like a way that you could come to peace with knowing that not everyone's always going to be on the same page?
Yeah, I think there was a piece to understanding that this is all that they know. This is all that their condition to know and understand, and that's where they're at. And so I had to accept that. And also, I'm so grateful that my husband helped draw the boundary for me, because I had only so much capacity to say, hey, like, can you not bring it up anymore? And so he was my first line of defense, and I feel like he was my protector of my energetic force field. And I mean, it kind of all fizzled out in terms of I stopped talking to my family and friends, and I actually just stopped bringing it up as well. So that was my solution.
Hard.
It was very hard, because the time when I wanted love and support, it was the complete opposite.
Were you able to fulfill your need for community in other ways?
Yes, I started following and listening to the Free Birth Society podcast. That was my only resource at the time. I didn't really know anyone personally who had a home birth. I didn't have friends who understood me in that way. So yeah, I sought it out, and I decided to join the Radical Birth Keeper School and make friends with all the women there who understood what birth could and should look like.
That's amazing. So would you be open to sharing about your birth a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so should I start from the beginning?
Wherever you feel called. Where do you want to start your story? That's up to
Okay.
you.
Yeah, well, this whole birth process, my husband and I were anticipating for a week-long birth. I didn't want to have any expectations that this is going to be a 3-hour birth. So we were thinking about it being for the long haul. And I also was thinking that I wasn't going to give birth for another 2 to 3 weeks, because, I hear stories that women can give birth at 44 weeks. And at that time, I was about 37 weeks. And we were supposed to go to Montana and stay at an Airbnb. And at that time, I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. It's a little close. And next thing you know, Thursday night rolls around and my waters begin to leak. And there was a pink tinge. And from my research, I read that was completely normal, but I still didn't know how quick birth was going to happen. And so the following day, it was like 12 hours after that, and my contractions started getting more intense and stronger before bedtime. And so this is Friday night, and I am like trying to find positions yeah, this is your story. And I was trying to find positions to get comfortable, but I ended up just laying in an L-shaped position against my bed. And I made sure my husband, cleaned the house, cleaned the bathroom, stocked the fridge up, and lay, workout mats along the bed, because we have wooden floors. So I tried to get comfortable, but that didn't work. And before all this, in terms of how I was thinking about birth, I was very much like, what is it going to feel like? And I feel that, I've always been an active person, and I love to hike and give myself physical challenges. So I knew that I did have the mental capacity for it. But I didn't know how intense it would be. And so the next morning rolls around. This is Saturday morning, and I do purge and vomit a few times. And what happens after that? I make sure to hydrate and have electrolytes and water. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be that woman to want to dance and roll around on a stability ball, and that was not me at all. I just wanted to stay still on the couch in like a reclined position. And yeah, I actually am really grateful that one of my mentors through the Radical Birth Keeper School, she's an authentic midwife, and she gave me her phone number. And so we were talking back and forth, and I understood even the power of support virtually. It's plenty. And okay, let's see. And so I decided to take a shower to change up the feeling, and I thought it would go away, but it didn't go away. And then I had this sudden urge to poop, and I start spotting. And so here we are. And so I start spotting, and I'm not like, oh no, this is bad. I'm just like, what does this mean? Could this mean I'm close? Could this mean baby's descending? And so I message my mentor, and she's like, spotting is completely normal. And I was going through these very intense contractions, and I was like, how long is this going to last? And she messaged me back, and she said, oh, it could be 2 days, it could be 2 hours. And I said, okay. And my mantra during this whole birth process was, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. If all these women before me have done it, I can do it. And this moment was so intense. And I came to a point where I was like, I can't do this. And this whole time, my husband is being so present with me, so there for me, getting me whatever I need, putting the blanket on and off when I was getting hot and cold. And he said, no, you can do this. And I felt like it was so, I felt like his presence was so important. I wasn't sure even if I would want to give birth alone, like in the bathroom, but that was not the case. And I find that having the right partner to support me and hold space is really important. And to have them, he didn't have any fears, and I'm grateful that he was completely on board, and he was watching, videos and listening to stories with me. So we were on this journey together. And so yeah, after I like try to poop, I go to my bed, and after my mentor tells me it could be 2 hours or 2 days, something shifted in me. And this is after I took a little nap that my husband recommended I do, because we heard stories that the woman always, gets a little nap or rest in before the actual birth, before the baby comes out. So I was able to take a nap, and I was able to muster up some energy, and I'm on all fours. My forearms are on the bed, and suddenly my body begins to push. And at that moment, as a first-time mom, I still don't know what's happening. I don't know that that's my baby really coming through the pelvis. And I get these involuntary screams coming out of me like no other. I don't even think I can repeat it. And this is happening for like 10 to 15 minutes on intense pushing of my body doing it. And I'm like, okay, I need to break the cycle, thinking it's going to stop. So I muster up the energy to stand up, and I'm standing, and I start to feel the baby's head. And so I'm asking my husband, oh my God, is that the head? And he's like, yeah, that's the baby's head. And in this moment, my husband tells me later on that, this is his first time witnessing a birth. And my baby's head, he thought it was abnormal to see the baby's skull so cone shaped, but of course that's normal because the baby is coming through the pelvis, so it has to be squished. And yeah, oh honey, let's stand up. You want to sit? You want to sit? Let's see if you want to eat. Okay, he wants the boob. Okay.
It's the beautiful thing about nursing. It just helps in so many situations.
Totally. Okay. And so at this time, I'm standing. Oh, sorry. And so at this time, I'm standing and my husband is kneeling in front of me. Oh no. So at this time, I'm standing and I'm leaning on my husband, and the same, my body is pushing and I'm still screaming in his ear. And so that the head, I could feel the head, and then I from what I've learned and the stories I've heard, like there is no rush, and to just breathe through, my baby coming out. And so I something that went through my mind was like, I don't feel the need to push, the sensation to push. What do I do? And so because I was so looking forward to meeting my baby, I do give a push and his head pops out. There's that ring of fire that I push through. And then I give 2 more pushes and my husband catches the baby with his left hand, like football hold, passes Bjorn to me. And I look, and my one fear was, am I going to be able to tell if it's a boy or girl? Because I've never seen a newborn, which is hilarious. And I said, oh my God, I think it's a boy. And he's like, yeah, that's a boy. And so, yeah, it was beautiful. And I never thought I would be giving birth standing up. And, I immediately sit down, and we decided to do a lotus birth. So 45 minutes later, my husband was like, hey, it's been 45 minutes. Do you want to birth your placenta? And I did feel a little crampy, and I went into a tall kneeling on the bed and pushed the placenta out, just a little push, and then it came right out into the potty. And yeah, we had a beautiful lotus birth, and I'm so glad we experienced that. Yeah.
Emily, thank you so much for sharing that story with me. It's such a gift to hear, and it's like over and over, it's so powerful to put myself in those moments. I've been there too, and I think what's so beautiful is the surprises that await us all. We hear a million stories, but we still don't know what ours will be like.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what position we're going to want. And the next baby you have, it will be its own complete story, and the different positions will apply in different paces, and because they're bringing in their own everything. And so it's just so, to me, it's just so aligned with when we respect the individuality behind birth, when we respect the individuality of each person on earth, each baby that comes in, each mother who gives birth, each way that she feels comfortable, each way that we each have needs that have to be met in their own perfect way. It's so important to me as a foundation of good care and what nurturing to one another actually means, to just listen closely and say, okay, this is what you need. Let's make that happen. And so I love that story, and thank you for sharing it.
My pleasure.
So you free birth your baby, your husband gets this amazing opportunity to catch his son. And what happened then? What was immediate postpartum like for you?
I knew at that time, I wanted to give myself 40 days, no visitors, just me and my husband figuring it out on our own. And my mother-in-law actually before the birth, wanted to come. And at first I closed my heart because of the feedback we were receiving, but I decided to open it. And so she did come 3 weeks later. But going back, so immediate postpartum, it was solely my husband that supported me immediately postpartum. And at that time, I even discussed with him, are you sure you can handle I asked him, "Are you sure you can handle 2 weeks? Like cooking, cleaning, helping?" And he said, yeah, he was on board. And, we didn't even have set up a meal train or prepare any food. I just really thought, oh, we'll manage it. However, I didn't realize how much work it is for my husband and for me as well, tending to a baby. And I would say on day 7, I did break down and cry because I was really wishing that my mom was there. And at this time, she was in Thailand, even though she did ask, like, "You sure you don't want me to come?" But I still had this barrier where I was like, "No, like I'm fine." And I think looking back, that was a complete regret, because I think she would have supported me in the most, like, the perfect way possible.
Gosh, that's so interesting because, I where is the root of that? Where even if we know, like you did, that you wanted those 40 days of seclusion, where in there did we translate that as having people on the outside and us on the inside? Like, where did we skip over the piece that 40 days is also characterized by people taking care of us? I think that's so interesting because that is also something that I can resonate with, and something that I see so often. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about, where that assumption came from for you.
I guess it just came from wanting to, if I were to have visitors, I think it'd be getting into the perhaps trap of having an obligation to allow family or friends to hold the baby, and not letting, this new relationship and transition into motherhood and this new relationship with the baby to sink in. And I also feel that a lot of people don't understand what postpartum is like for the mom. And so I was afraid of getting the wrong support and the wrong energy.
Yeah, I can,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think that's probably really, really common. It's almost the fear of having to really firmly say what you want and what you don't want, and it's almost easier to just not do it. Um, yeah, so it's that, you know, more of a conscious understanding of, I think about, myself as someone who would go in and help people. How can we empower people to ask for help, and also protect their boundaries? I love that you said that your husband really became like your boundary protector. And I think that's a role that he probably could have really played during postpartum too, is this is how we're doing it. So you didn't even have to say it. Um, but yeah, that's really interesting. And so when you invited your mother-in-law to come in and help you sort of week 3, how did that go?
It went terrible.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, and it's funny when you asked about where all this roots from. I think if we lived how tribes used to live, or how families used to live traditionally, I may have been able to see what postpartum looks like for my mom or my grandma. But because none of us have seen that, because we're all separated now, moving away from each other, I don't think we really know what that looks like. But yeah, with my mother-in-law visiting, I don't think she knew either how to support me, and I didn't know how to verbalize it. And I think it's a shift to be the first, to have the first grandchild. And so even seeing perhaps the dynamic between me and my husband may have been a shift for my mother-in-law, and us living in a small house and sharing the same quarters. I think there was just a lot of she didn't know what to do with herself.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of awkward moments on like can you make me food? And her tippy toeing around, and then her coming in, hearing the baby cry, asking, oh, like, do you want me to take the baby? And I'm like, no, I don't want you to do that. I'm figuring it out, and I have the boob and the breast milk. I'm not doing any bottles. But I know it all came from love, but it was kind of distorted.
Yeah, I think that is a hurdle that that's all part of the learning curve for culture and for families. As you said, we're so independent, we've moved far away from our families, and so when we don't have that immediate comfort and knowing of one another and knowing how the routines already work, that's a big challenge. So as you sort of reflect on your 40 days that you wanted, what did you love about it? Like, what was amazing about it?
I loved being able to sit outside. At this time, it was the beginning of summer, so getting some sunshine and just being with my baby and sharing these moments. And also, I would say having that support, that sister support from the women I became friends with, and them checking in on me, messaging me, and not asking, questions like, are you getting enough milk? Like fear-based questions. And I really appreciated that. And it definitely impacted what those 40 days look like for me.
I think, pregnancy and birth and postpartum and honestly, like life, we get the spectrum of experiences, like things that were hard and things that, went fine, and we may not even acknowledge them because they went fine. And sometimes things that are smooth just don't get the attention. But I love reflecting and looking at the things that were beautiful. And I think if in the moment we can stop and do that more, I think that the feelings that we can generate through really expanding upon those good moments can help us balance those other moments where we're like, oh, this is really uncomfortable, or, oh, I don't want to be in this situation, or whatever it may be. So I always like to hear about the things that felt really good. I'm curious about, so, when you've gone through, or you've been diving in more to birth support and understanding how to support others, what would you pass along to people who may be in, your situation, preparing for their first birth and stepping out of the bounds of what their family with them?
I would say openly speak to your husband or partner about what you're thinking on how you want your birth to look like, and also be aware of how you want to give birth. Be aware of the reactions you may get from family, and it might even be a possibility that you don't share it with them, and kind of see where they're at and maybe pick their brain before you express yourself. And also, I feel like the birth is always the focus, but I think postpartum is the higher focus, and making sure you have that meal train and support postpartum.
Yeah, and I think, there's so much more out there now in terms of resources and books and stories to listen to, that I think people are in a better place to find more information and plan on that now than there was even 10 years ago. But yeah, I just, I love how when we go through these transformative experiences, we're never the same. And I really admire your being able to take your story and embrace it into supporting other people. So I would love for you to share, the work that you're doing, whatever websites or projects you're working on. Where can our listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm supporting women in Salmon, Idaho, and focusing on postpartum support as well. I'm also doing virtual coaching with mostly first-time moms who are interested in having a home birth outside the system. And you could find me at emilyseeboo.com. And on Instagram, I also post birth stories on YouTube. There's a lot of healing birth story medicine there as well, where I interview women and how they share their birth stories and their reflections on the experience.
And I'll make sure to put all of that. I'll get that from you, Emily, and we'll put it in the show notes. But oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing your gorgeous story and letting us have a little glimpse into what you have experienced. And I think that oh, your guy has been amazing through this whole interview. But I just honor you, and I honor your work, and I honor your story. And thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you, Christine. Practice having you on.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. And our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.